even after The Rise of Skywalker has come out, there's still more Star Wars to talk about.
Yay! What a day and age that we live in. What a day. What a glorious day.
Yeah, a day when we no longer only had Star Wars movies or anything other than video games every 3 years.
Yeah, that's true. And they're not
in the dark days.
Yeah, seriously.
Even though the sequel trilogy has divided a lot of people, us included.
A lot of people.
Thankfully Disney, I think, is learning a little bit of their lessons from this, and they're starting to do a lot better, or at least showing some good signs with their TV work.
Yes.
Because we watched the first season of The Mandalorian, and I think this will be a much more positive discussion than some of our previous videos, thankfully.
Absolutely.
Yes. We watched the first episode together, and then we all kind of zigzagged our way through each episode because we just couldn't meet together, and we didn't plan to meet together for any of them. But like, I know, at least for me on my part, because they were staggered, I found myself every Friday going, "Ooh, I gotta watch The Mandalorian when I get back from school, just to see what's going on." Like, that anticipation was really nice, which is interesting because in this day and age of streaming where they drop the whole season on you and you can binge it, I kind of found that was an entertaining thing to look forward to every Friday morning when they would drop the next episode, if that makes sense.
Oh sure, yeah, because when you in binge culture now, you get the opportunity to watch something from beginning to end, and for some shows that myself and Amber and I watched, we've enjoyed binging some of those things, but then after you're done, it's like, well, what now?
I gotta wait 8 months.
What's gonna fill the void in my soul now?
Watch The Office again.
Well, pretty soon that's not going to be the case for Netflix subscribers, but
pour one out for my homies.
Have to pay respects. But thankfully with The Mandalorian, even though you still kind of feel that after the season's done, at least it was a bit dragged out a bit more so that you could just relish in the joy of being able to experience something of quality for once.
Yes.
Well, for me it's a bit of a different story because I didn't have access to Disney Plus, and so we essentially had to steal it from my sister in the last week just so that I could make sure that I watched all the episodes before coming to this. And so I binge watched the entire season in the last 2 days. So I didn't do the whole Friday to Friday experience. It was very much a binge watching experience for me.
So what did that change for you? You didn't have to wait.
It was able to just go straight through every episode, and in a way, I'm sad because I didn't get the chance to really just sit and dwell on the episodes. But at the same time, as I was binge watching, it didn't feel like there was a whole lot to dwell on. Because a lot of the times when you're watching something from episode to episode, you sit there and think, okay, so what details do I really need to think about in preparation for next week? But as you're binge watching, you're like, oh, so there's no need to remember any details because nothing from this episode carries on to the next episode, or nothing from this episode carries on to the next episode. And so for me, it was kind of a mixed feeling. So I prefer binge watching just because I like to soak up all of the sensations at once. But,
okay.
But that's just me.
I think it would have been cool to binge watch it, but I really liked sitting and thinking about and being like, okay, I gotta watch for this and this and this in the next episode. If you remember when they did the first episode, is half an hour long. Which was an interesting change of pace because most streaming shows are 45 minutes to an hour nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's half an hour and it stops right at the half hour. You're going 100 miles an hour with this, and then it's tune in next week for Mandalorian Part 2, and you're just
just like the old days.
And you're just
oh, here's the cliffhanger, and now we have to wait.
Well, especially since every single episode has a recap too.
Mm-hmm.
It has that very old school feel to it.
Yeah.
Which I really liked. I thought it was good.
Star Wars harkens back to the old days of serialized adventures anyway, so that's perfect.
Flash Gordon stuff.
Yeah.
So this was an old serial, essentially. And in a way, it was essentially an old movie in more ways than one. My dad, who barely knows anything about Star Wars, watched with me, and he was comparing it to Clint Eastwood and the old cowboy westerns the entire time. Saying, oh yeah, I remember a movie with John Wayne that was just like this, or something like that. Every other episode he was saying something like that. So it really has that old-timey feel of something that it's carrying on the tradition of something older and bringing it into Star Wars, and that's pretty good.
And I like too that it wasn't done for like nostalgia bait either. You know, we can argue about fan service in the show, but like, you know, I think going off what you said, you know, I think those aesthetic choices are really effective because it places you in this situation that, you know, it's strange because like, you know, it takes place after Return of the Jedi, like 4 to 6 years or whatever it is, but it still feels like it's in its own separate timeline in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that because it doesn't really put pressure on the audience to recall all the stuff that they remember from previous movies. It just exists on its own as a show. And even though there are references to the Clone Wars in there, where you have like, you know, references to the Siege of Mandalore.
Or the actual battle droids.
Yeah, the super battle droids and like the gunship there too. Even then, it's so surface level to where someone like your dad who doesn't know much about Star Wars can watch it and be like, oh yeah, they're just droids killing people.
Yep.
Or, well, and even that, you can even go deeper. Like, there's stuff for the casual viewer, but also if you paid, like, for me who knows a lot about Star Wars, there was a lot in this show where I was like, oh, I totally know what that's talking about. Like, it even, like, this show dug into the holiday special, widely reviewed as the worst Star Wars
Life Day?
anything ever that's ever been, like, made by Lucasfilm.
Had 3 references to that in the
Life,
first episode.
Life Day, it
The
talked about the
Megalosaurus.
Megalosaur, and there was
His
one
weapon.
That
is
the
the
weapon
shock.
is the shock thing is from the holiday special. But that part in the holiday special is the best part of it, honestly.
The
The
best
only
part.
good part of it. But like it had references to that, and one guy, I'm afraid I'm gonna miss Life Day. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, dude, you mentioned that we watched the first episode together. When that happened, like all of us were just like, did he just say that?
Because the holiday special is like one of the only things that George Lucas is like, I wish I could destroy every copy of
It's
that.
like one of the dark inside jokes of the community.
Yeah.
It's so bad. But you have to watch it just so it is like it's a rite of passage, honestly.
It's so hard though, because
It's
I agree
so
with
bad.
you. But I watched it and it was torturous. I could feel like the energy from my soul just like being drained from me.
I felt revitalized. I loved it. I had such a great time. Oh man!
But
going back to the Mandalorian, kind
yes.
of going back to what you were saying, like you can feel it in a lot of the sensations. They do references here and there to the state of the world, and I think that's one of the coolest parts. Is that there's actual world building in this.
Yes. There's
Episode
Thank
1
you.
mentions that there's different kinds of money now because the Imperial credits are worthless because the Empire's gone.
Yep.
And it's so cool, little details like that. They only last a couple seconds, and normal people aren't really going to get that. But when you think about the world building, oh, that's cool stuff. That's exciting.
yeah.
And then there's stuff that I'm still not a fan of that was introduced in kind of the whole Disney sequel, in like the idea that Jedi are a myth. Like no one knows what the Jedi were, and they carried that into the Mandalorian too. And I'm like, they were a huge presence literally 30 years ago. It's not
Not even that, like
In
25 or something?
20 years.
20 years ago. And it's like, really? No one in the entire galaxy knows what a Jedi is.
I
knows
always
what the
find that
Force is.
funny because Han Solo always talks about how it's like, oh, the Force is just a myth or whatever. When literally it's one of my few gripes about Han Solo in New Hope where he's just like, dude, like you were alive during the Clone Wars. Don't pretend like you don't.
Chewbacca worked with Yoda.
That's insane. Like it's stuff like I totally agree with you that I just boggles me that they keep carrying this into the shows where it's like,
Part of the difficulty
Yeah.
for me is reconciling the old Mandalorian lore with the new Disney Mandalorian lore. Because in the old books and the old just canon, like the Mandalorians were this brutal conqueror race that fought against the Jedi every couple of years because every time a new Mandalore rose up, the Jedi had to put him back down, kind of thing. And it was a really interesting and compelling system that they had. And so I really got into that old Mandalore stuff, and none of that exists now. Now you could call the new Mandalorians pretty much an order of knights that just live on their own and protect the innocent, and
More or less, yeah.
and they're their own thing. Like, they have nothing to do with the old Mandalorians that I grew up knowing, and so I have to sometimes reconcile with that. Like, wait, the Mandalorians fought the Jedi 30 years ago. Oh wait, no, they didn't. This is Disney lore.
I would tend to agree with you. We'll probably run into that because we grew up reading with the expanded universe and stuff.
Mhm.
But the new kids that are coming into Star Wars just now after the sequel trilogy and stuff, they don't have that base. So I feel like in the next little bit, we'll start to have that phase out just because Disney's like, Thanos snapped all of the expanded universe
Well,
stuff
they've got
away.
the Clone Wars Mandalorians who are peaceful and loving, and we like happiness and soft, gentle calmness.
Then they had Death Watch, so
And the Death Watch were considered the bad guys. But even Death Watch is considered an old thing because now we've got Mandalorians with the code and the this is the way and all of that stuff now.
Speaking of which, did you notice in this show, like, aside from the social media barrage that made this show, like, way more popular than I think Disney was prepared for it to be,
Mm-hmm.
significantly by the fact that they didn't do any merch for this show, besides maybe a few t-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was good about the show that they had quotable stuff. Like, that stuff that, like, Force Awakens had some, and Last Jedi had, like, a couple, but I had a bunch of quotes from this show, like, this is the way...
I have spoken.
I have spoken. I am programmed to self-destruct. Like, stuff like that where you're just like... or, like, little like, stuff that I just thought was... Like, it's supposed to be a drama, but there were, like, little hints and cracks where I was like with the Jawas where they're like, Suka! Where they had got the Mudhorn egg.
Mm-hmm.
Like, little weird stuff like that. The New Hope had and the original trilogy had. And then the prequel trilogy was like, let's add Jar Jar Binks. And it fell flat on its face. And the sequel trilogy kind of did it, but not really. And so it's like, I enjoyed that because that harkened back to the original trilogy. That's something I've always liked about Star Wars.
You can definitely tell the writing had more love in it. The writing had more punch to it.
Yes.
And so,
Jon Favreau, baby. He knows what he's doing. Even though I don't like his Lion King remake.
no one involved is infallible. There's still imperfections, but
Well,
they do a good work here.
Well, me saying that's kind of an unfair comment anyway, because I feel like that movie isn't really his anyway. I feel like he was just a name they plastered onto the movie to say that someone directed it.
Well, he did good with the Mowgli thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, like Jungle Book was decent.
Mowgli. I meant Jungle Book.
I mean, those two are pretty much interchangeable. I mean, you have the Jungle Book, which is like this kind of weird remake, and then Mowgli is...
Andy Serkis's baby that he made on Netflix is just weird.
Yeah.
I am of the opinion that if Lucasfilm is smart, they're going to lock down Dave Filoni and be like, bro, you are George Lucas reincarnated. Fix Star Wars for us, please. And I am of the opinion that if they did that, they'd probably be able to come up with some really good stuff. Especially because, like, Clone Wars is good. Mandalorian's good. Rebels is good. There's some bumps in Rebels, but overall it's pretty good story-wise. I think that they probably need to let Dave Filoni have the reins a little bit and maybe not listen to Kathleen Kennedy as much.
I think part of the issue is that, like, if Clone Wars, I think all of us would agree, is a really good show. It's got its up, it's got its down, it's got a few bad episodes here and there, but generally it's really good.
Yes.
Rebels, it's above average. Mandalorian, I agree, is above average. But we kind of need something great to really sink our teeth into. Like, genuinely great. And so far we're not really getting that. Like, in my opinion at least. I feel like we're still waiting for that big moment. Because right now we've got the sequel trilogy that's just really dividing us. We got Rogue One Solo. And now we've got this. And it's just like, so alright, so what's the thing that's really going to light a fire for Star Wars now? Like, what's the thing that's really going to set things off and make things...
That is true.
I think they just need to establish stakes more, because, like, you know, you gotta emotionally invest your audience in something to really make it feel like it's this enormous thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not saying that The Mandalorian isn't emotionally satisfying, because I think it is.
I thought it was.
We could probably agree that maybe episode 3 is the best, possibly.
Out of the
In
prequels?
the Mandalorian. I mean, in
in the Mandalorian. Yeah, that or the finale.
Yeah, the finale's great too, but
The episode 3 is the one. That's the one where he goes to get the kid back, right?
yeah.
I thought episode 1 was the best.
Okay.
I've probably. The only one that I didn't really like sink my teeth in with is the one where he went to Tatooine, and the part that broke away from it for me, that lost me a little bit in that episode, was when he was doing the sign language with the Tusken Raiders.
I thought that was clever.
I thought it was clever, but I was like, I mean, he's an experienced bounty hunter, but
Everyone knows every language.
I was like, are you kidding me? Like, the Sand people know this. Like, it just made me laugh. I was like, I wonder what they're saying.
Well,
Anyway, that part really just like took me. I was like, what is going?
well, anyway, I think
Sorry, continue.
I think the reason why, at least in my opinion, or from what I've noticed, a lot of people think episode 3 in this season is the best, or one of the best, is because that 3-episode arc at the beginning was like building to something, and at the end of that episode, you could almost say that like episodes 1 through 3 were like its own contained movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was basically feature length anyway, and so like you watch those 3 episodes, and then you like get the sense that you get this one hardened bounty hunter with a tragic past who has suddenly decided to change everything, well, not everything, but a lot of things that he knew, and go against his nature a little bit, and think about someone else for a change. But then episodes 4 through 8, which are mostly pretty good, I kind of feel like they're just continuing that story rather than successfully building to something else. Especially because of episodes 4 and 5, I think, too.
I remember hearing someone stating that The Mandalorian feels like a 4-hour like movie, like a double movie, forced into 8 hours. Like that's how it felt to them, and I kind of agree with that point. Like 1 through 3 is very interconnected. It's very like that could be a movie, and I would be totally fine with that. And then 7 and 8 are almost kind of like the sequels to 1, 2, and 3.
Yes,
But then
I agree.
4 and 5 and 6 really are just thrown in there. They're filler almost.
Mm-hmm.
Like they introduce new characters, but like really the prison ship episode, like you could throw that out of there and it would have no effect whatsoever on the entire character development or storyline.
Yeah.
It was a cool episode, but I see what you're saying.
And so
the overall arc.
So I feel like 1, 2, and 3, and then going on to 7 and 8, that's like one big movie.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got the random stuff that's thrown in there, like, oh, we need to actually have some more episodes. We need a TV show.
Yeah, and I think that's why people consider those episodes to be weaker, just because the structure of the season is pretty weird for that reason. You have, well, I'm not going to reiterate points, but like, yeah, it just goes from being a movie to kind of like, you know, just like
Episode of the week kind of things.
Yeah,
Like
for
the
sure.
old Saturday morning cartoons. Oh, now he's going on this adventure. Oh, now he's going on this adventure. And then they come back.
I think a part of that has to do with them trying to go. I don't know if they were trying to aim for it, but I think that they worked for this one, in my opinion, because we're trying to harken back to those serials, and even more so like Saturday morning cartoons. Like you remember in Clone Wars, you said like there are some episodes that are down, but like if you watched Clone Wars, you remember the first couple episodes. You had the one where Yoda was fighting the wager against Asajj Ventress.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had the second one, which I don't remember which one it was.
That was they investigated the outpost with the 5 clone troopers.
Which is actually one of my favorite episodes of Clone Wars. But it was a totally, at the time it was a totally isolated thing. And I mean, later on you get to know those clone troopers more, but at the time it was like isolated, and you didn't even see Anakin, Obi-Wan, General Grievous, or Padme or R2-D2 really until like episode 4 or 5 or something of Clone Wars.
A little bit,
right?
Yeah.
But I feel like that helps set up the world, at least for Mandalorian now. Going back to Mandalorian, I feel like those episodes are in there because it kind of sets the tone, because the finale was, in my opinion, awesome.
Oh, it was great.
I thought it was way good. So now we have where his journey now is supposedly for season 2 or whatever, is he's gonna go find the child's home planet. And so I think that those episodes, we're gonna kind of find out a little bit more about that, and those kind of help flesh out that world, which I think will be good in the long run. But I do agree that if we're looking at just the season, I agree that they're like, okay, so we're gonna go help the people who fish for shrimp
The shrimp
in the
fishers.
little ponds.
And this is the second time in canon Star Wars that we've remade Seven Samurai.
Mhm.
Yeah, or we're gonna go to Tatooine for no reason except that a
Needs money.
random weirdo wants him to help him find
Oh, and that's our first appearance of Moff Gideon too. So
what?
yeah, who do you think comes at the end and looks at the dead body?
I don't think that's Moff Gideon though.
I didn't
He's
think
got
that was
the-
Moff
He's got the
Gideon.
nice black shoes. So
No, but he had spurs though.
well, who else would it be?
I don't
I
know.
don't know.
Because they had no plans for the second season at that point.
Well, as you've mentioned,
Yeah.
I mean, there are other open threads that
Maybe.
could have been there to set up for future seasons.
It's possible.
Man, I really hope that because here's one of my really guilty pleasure wishes about this show, and I know it's really weird, but well, it's not that weird, but I'm hoping that they address Boba Fett. I know he's supposed to be dead, but in the expanded universe, he flew out of the Sarlacc. I mean, come on, he's Boba Fett.
And he has Mandalorian armor. I mean, he should be able to at least.
Speaking of which, this show, everybody shoots a freaking Beskar, and they hit him, and it's like during the gunfights, you watch the bullets bounce off. You think people would
aim below.
aim below, or a little bit to the right in between his armor right here, or just
Well, don't they at one point?
no, not in the whole show. They keep shooting the same parts.
He always somehow magically gets shot right in the Beskar. There's a couple times that he gets shot elsewhere, but he's perfectly fine and keeps moving without a
Because
problem.
it always bounced off the Beskar. I was like, come on, man. There was a couple of times where I was like, okay, with all those stormtroopers, not one of them could hit in the side.
Well, I mean, this.
I know it's
The
stormtroopers,
worst
but
part of it,
still.
the worst one for me was in episode 3 when he's facing down the entire Bounty Hunters Guild. He's got people above him, to this side of him, to this side of him when he's strapped in the little truck. Seriously, not a single person can shoot him or throw a grenade or anything, and he's almost.
It was that was one of the parts where I was like, come on, these are all trained people.
But that said, he does get the crap beat out of him every time he gets into melee combat.
that is true.
Which I appreciate.
You could see some real weight behind what he was doing, and he was he could handle things, but he didn't come out unscathed.
Yeah.
Even his ship too.
Especially when he fights Clancy Brown, the
Oh,
Devorian. That part was awesome, and he got thrown around.
speaking of that, episode 6 has some great cameos in it. Clancy Brown is in it.
I feel like episode 6's entire purpose is to be a cameo episode.
Well, it
No,
is, but I love
seriously,
it.
it's Clancy Brown. Who's the retired stormtrooper with the blaster on his shoulders? Isn't his name Bill Boyd? Isn't he a comedian or something?
Yeah, I'd have to look up.
I think he has a part in one of the other Star Wars properties, though.
What?
He might, but
I remember hearing him being something like a voice actor for.
Oh.
yeah. But I looked up while we were watching this episode. I looked up the IMDb cast list for that episode, and I was like, "Holy shoot!" One of them was the girl that she's in the Harry Potter film series.
Yeah, it was Tonks. She was a Twilight chick. That was Tonks.
The Harley Quinn ripoff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then all those X-wing pilots in the end of that episode, you have Dave Filoni,
Dave Filoni.
Rick Famuyiwa, who I think directed that episode,
Yep.
and then Deborah Chow, who directed a couple of them too.
Yeah. I was
All
watching.
Dave Filoni needed was his cowboy hat, and he would have been great.
No, so I was watching it, and I'm watching the X-wing pilots come in, and it cuts to Dave Filoni's face. I was like, "Hey, that's Dave Filoni." And then I looked again, and I was like, "Who are these 3 X-wing pilots?" And then I looked at the guest starring in the end credits. I was like, "Oh, those are the directors. Look at them go."
Like, I think most of the directors had cameo appearances in
I think so.
the show.
I mean,
I know
Taika
Waititi
had a main voice role.
Yeah.
I really liked his character. I thought his character was so awesome.
IG-11 was great. I just love that.
IG-11 was overpowered.
I mean, he was OP, but he was awesome. Like, a lot of these things that... It's funny about The Mandalorian, because there are a lot of things you can nitpick, and we have nitpicked a little bit in this video, but for some reason, I was just having so much fun that I didn't care, honestly.
I definitely had fun watching the episodes, especially the first one, when he comes rolling up and he's like, I am commissioned by the Bounty Hunter Guild. Pass over the prey. And they all hide behind everything. He just starts shooting everybody. And the Mandalorian's up on the hill and he goes, droids. And he comes running down. And IG-11's shooting everybody and he's like, IG unit, stand down.
Shoots him
And he just gets blasted.
in the Beskar.
He just gets blasted.
I am in the guild!
I'm in the guild. That part made me laugh.
I do think that's a really good arc for Din Djarin, though. Because, you know, in the very first episode, you have him, you know, very, very distrustful of droids for good reason.
Yeah.
And then in the very end, you know, who ends up being the only one who actually sees his face? The same droid he was judgmental of. And
One he killed.
Yeah.
And for that droid to completely turn after being programmed and, you know, be willing to help him resuscitate him, I think that was great.
And pull the Terminator 2.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that, but that's true.
As soon as he was stepping into lava, I was like, yep, that's Terminator 2 right there.
What do you...
All he needed to do was
Yeah,
thumbs up before it blew up.
That would have been great. I would have loved that.
That would have been... that would have been very Taika Waititi.
That would have been amazing, though.
Speaking of which, when he gets the jetpack and he flies on the TIE fighter, I thought that part was so cool because during the whole show, when he like tethers somebody with the thingy or with his like wrist thing, he like has to pull it. But I really liked when he's flying right behind it and he hits the button on his thing. It's like, and the shot where Moff Gideon is in the TIE fighter and he looks up and the Mandalorian is hanging on top of the TIE fighter. I thought that was so cool. I was like, dude, that guy is awesome. And they give him the jetpack and he's like, I gotta get me one of those.
The Rising Phoenix or whatever they call it.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Have you ever practiced with the Rising Phoenix? I am definitely enjoying the lore and I am intrigued to see where they go. Because Moff Gideon has a Darksaber.
Yeah.
And I remember
Darksaber.
going when it was like right through the side of the TIE fighter, I was like, what? The Darksaber? And then I remember Dave Filoni wrote this, and the Darksaber is like one of Dave Filoni's like
Personal little babies.
things that he brings to every show, like Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just waiting for Ahsoka to show up. Who knows? We'll see.
Who knows if she'll show up. In closing, I mean, of course, there are more things that we could potentially talk about. You know, we haven't even waxed poetic about the child at all, which I know is the meme of the internet right now.
Arguably, it's the reason why it's so popular, but continue.
No, yeah, I'm not going to argue that at all. I mean, just look at Google Trends.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, you know, separate from all that stuff and all of the insane hype that this has gotten because of that and other things, I actually really did enjoy the show overall. Like, you know, I have issues with minor things here and there, and comment real quick on how we watched this. The way that I actually went through The Mandalorian is I watched the whole entire thing with my parents because they don't have Disney Plus, and so they would come over here and we would make it like kind of an event.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually watched it by watching the first 3 episodes, and then later, maybe a couple weeks later or something, we watched 4 and 5. And then on the last night, we watched 6, 7, and 8. So I kind of watched it segmented that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way, 4 and 5 for me felt weaker, not just because they were the quote filler episodes, but because, you know, I didn't really feel like the acting or the writing was as strong there. I just didn't really feel that much suspense. But everything else was just, it was that classic Star Wars fun that I wanted it to be, while also having a more unique tone that I was looking for, especially with the musical score, which was great. The visuals, which the cinematography was on par with Rogue One,
Yep.
And the lighting was better. And also,
Yeah.
you know, it's a TV show, so the visual effects aren't as great, but everything still felt like I was watching something genuine from Star Wars, and I had so much fun that I didn't really have much to complain about.
I don't really have a whole lot to complain about. Like, the kind of things that I would nitpick are the kind of things I've already mentioned, just like what they've done to the Mandalorians, and that's not specific to this show at all. That's something that has been going on for a decade now. And so I did enjoy myself. I really did. And I thought, hey, maybe this is the future of Star Wars right here.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I couldn't help but compare it because it is a space western. And that's like the intention of it, at least to me, that's the intentional feel that this is supposed to be a space western. I couldn't help but compare it to another space western that I really, really like, the Firefly series.
I knew that was coming.
I was gonna
I
say,
knew that was coming.
what other space western is there?
And I can watch the Firefly series over and over again because I just love the wit and the writing and the acting and the everything, like down to even like the shootouts, is really interesting and captivating. With this kind of comparison, I feel like Mandalorian doesn't really stack up. And so while I enjoyed myself and I don't have really anything to complain about, it's not something that I would watch again.
Yeah, it doesn't stick with you as strongly, I guess, which that I can totally get.
And so I think watching Mandalorian now, like maybe when season 2 comes out, I'll watch it again, but I'm genuinely satisfied. I can say, all right, I watched it, goodbye. Like I don't really need to hold on to it anymore. It doesn't have that effect on me.
No, that's fair.
So while I liked it, I just felt, well, that's above average. That's better than what Disney's been producing lately, so.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that too, because I feel like that sometimes with like these prestige pictures that come out, you know, like ones that are clearly made for Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are some that you watch and it's like, wow, that really hit me. I can see why they would nominate these for awards, but then you watch others and it's like, okay, you know, I get why people have loved it, like Little Women, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing about it really stands out as something that I would want to revisit over and over again, I guess. So I completely relate to that.
Yeah, I'm along the same lines. It makes me watching this show, and I really liked it, but like as it's ending, I'm like, okay, well, they have to somehow figure out a way to bottle everything that was good about this show, bottle it, and reproduce it in the Kenobi series, in the second season of Mandalorian, in the other stuff. And I know they've said that they're like shutting down production, at least today is what the reports have been.
Oh, for Kenobi?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I don't know if that actually is the truth or not. I feel like once Ewan McGregor says that it's over, then I'll believe it. But up until then, in my heart, I will always want the Obi-Wan show to continue.
At least that Clone Wars at season 7.
Yeah.
8, whatever.
Yes.
So, well, but like I'm saying, they have to figure out a way to bottle whatever juices that they put into this show to make it awesome, and Disney needs to figure out a way to reproduce that bottle around with their Star Wars stuff, or they're really gonna lose money. Because the sequel trilogy, they haven't impressed really anybody. I mean, they're good. I liked them, but they're not the original trilogy. They're nowhere near as good as like Empire Strikes Back and New Hope.
And they're not even as consistent as the prequels either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess my only thing is going out of this season is that they need to figure out a way to keep the good going, if that makes sense, so
Mhm.
they can keep making good stuff.
But I'd like to think that, you know, since Jon Favreau, he was the grandfather of all this, he created it, but if him and Dave Filoni keep sticking with it and they decide where they want to go, I think that'll end up being the case.
One final thing. Remember how our gripe mostly with the sequel trilogy was like, they didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
You can see where they wanted to end up with this one almost from the beginning, looking back on it. They knew where they wanted to end up with this show. They might have had some fillers, but they knew where they wanted this show to end up.
Well, every
Which I
space,
appreciated that.
every like serialized story has filler. I mean, some of the greatest shows of all time have. I mean, even Firefly does.
Not Breaking Bad.
Oh
that,
my
like,
gosh.
But like, yeah.
Calm down.
I am gonna go ahead and assume that we'll convene again for season 7 of Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't have Disney Plus.
Who knows? Maybe we can watch it here.
All 20 episodes?
Is it 20? I thought it was only 12. I thought it was 12.
Yeah, how many episodes it is. So.
It's 12 episodes?
I think it is.
Wow.
But dude, I am so hyped. Like,
it'll be interesting.
that trailer got me more excited than any of the marketing stuff for episode 9 or Mandalorian.
Oh, I would argue that the marketing for Mandalorian was awesome.
I mean,
I really liked it. And I don't know. I have to finish Clone Wars. I'm in season 3 right now. I got to go through 4 seasons before I get to season 7.
When you watch the rest of the seasons, you'll see why we're...
No, I know it comes.
That's the best part of the show.
Yes, I know it comes, but I've sludged through the Disney on Disney Channel episodes.
And now for something completely different for the outro. Thank you for watching. We will be back again officially for our next roundtable discussion for Sonic the Hedgehog.
Hedgehog.
That'll be
Gotta
great.
go fast.
Voiced by John Ralphio from Parks and Rec.
Can't wait. That's movie of the year, easily.
It's got James Marsden with another CGI animal in the back.
Listen, that movie won me over with the meow.
You had me at meow.
Won me over by the animators deciding to make a whole new hedgehog.
After they got cyberbullied.
It wasn't cyberbullying.
I'm just... Anyway, thanks for...
Enjoy the rest of your night. We're gonna cancel this before we get any more tangents about Sonic or anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye!
Bye.